Chosen one, welcome, unstoppable ones. Yes, you. The ones who weren't supposed to make it this far. The ones they tried to break, silence, and erase because your very existence makes their lives collapse. Look around you. You're still here. Still standing. Still glowing with something they cannot touch, no matter how many times they've tried. Let me tell you something they hope you never figure out. You were never the victim. You were the proof. You were never the weak one. You were the test. And every attack they launched, every scheme, every whisper, every ritual, that was their silent admission that you already won. Because nobody wastes that much energy trying to destroy someone who isn't already a threat. So here's the good news, beloved. Everything they fired at you, everything they plotted, everything they chanted in the dark has done nothing but strengthen what they cannot dismantle. And now the tables have turned. The hit they put on you, reversed. The storm they sent your way, headed right back to their doorstep. The fear they wanted you to carry, it's theirs now. This is your moment, not just to survive, but to realize you're the reason their system is cracking. You are not just here to endure. You are here to reveal, to shine, to remind the world that light doesn't bow to darkness. Not now, not ever. So stand tall. Lift your head. You are not hiding anymore. You're not just chosen. You're the wake-up call they can't ignore. Let's talk about it. Looking for purpose and peace. Hit subscribe and start the journey. When they decide to strike at someone they misjudge as defenseless, they unknowingly trigger their own downfall. They fail to see that what appears ordinary to them is actually carrying a hidden force, veiled in quiet strength. Their actions, rooted in arrogance and envy, are not merely personal, but breach something beyond their understanding. To them, it seems like a private conflict. In reality, they're colliding with something vast and untouchable. They believe their schemes go unnoticed because there's no immediate resistance. They assume silence means weakness, that absence of retaliation equals defeat. Yet, every move they make is imprinted into an unseen ledger. Each word, each thought, each secret plan aimed to wound is silently witnessed and cataloged by forces beyond their reach. They operate in shadows, but nothing remains hidden from the higher laws that govern balance. And so comes the reckoning, not because revenge is sought, but because equilibrium demands it. What they set in motion calls forth its own correction, one that neither asks for their consent nor waits for their recognition. They didn't merely wound a person, they disturbed a sacred order. That misstep unravels the illusions they cling to, stripping away whatever false security they built around themselves. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. What follows is a quiet dismantling. Their borrowed power slips through their fingers, their fabricated confidence dissolves, their alliances fracture without warning. The harm they attempt always circles back, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence of violating the invisible boundaries meant to protect what is destined. The more they push, the more they stumble into their own trap. The universe doesn't rush, but it never forgets. It restores what they tried to break, and it reveals what they tried to conceal. Truth doesn't fight them. It simply rises, and when it does, nothing they've constructed can withstand it. Ultimately, their undoing comes not through confrontation, but through presence. It isn't about outward defiance or dramatic gestures. It's the quiet constancy of being aligned with what they can neither imitate nor suppress. No matter how much they posture, their confidence falters in the face of an authenticity they cannot manipulate. Their games falter when met with someone anchored in an origin they can't access. Every tactic they deploy unravels against the silent force, because nothing they invent can override what is already written into being. It becomes clear to them, though they may never admit it. The real disruption lies not in actions taken, but in the unshakable essence of the one they sought to destroy. A presence that simply reflects them back to themselves, leaving them unable to bear the sight. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. It begins as a quiet reckoning, unseen yet unstoppable. Those who spend years scheming to extinguish what they cannot create mistake silence for consent and mistake stillness for weakness. They pour their energy into sabotage, unaware that the scales they've been tipping were never theirs to control. The weight of their choices does not vanish in the dark. It accumulates like invisible stones strapped to their own feet, and the moment comes when they can no longer stand beneath it. They believe betrayal, harassment, and destruction are private matters, but the unseen balance sheet records everything with precision. What they owe is not abstract. It becomes a burden that presses back into their lives with a force they cannot evade. They are convinced they can shatter someone's spirit without consequence. Yet in reality, what they aim to break only grows more unshakable, and what they attempt to erase only writes itself more boldly into existence. What they misjudge is that every wound they try to inflict deepens the strength of the very soul they aim to dismantle. The longer they evade the inevitable, the harsher it returns, because the universe does not forget what is owed to justice. They misread endurance as defeat and fail to notice how each of their attacks transforms into a testimony of what cannot be erased. Their campaigns to drain, control, and obscure a purpose they do not understand only summon the forces that expose them. Every layer of deception they construct collapses on itself, leaving them astonished that the same energy they unleashed returns multiplied. What they thought was buried grows into the very evidence of their undoing. This is not vengeance, but an unbending symmetry that corrects the imbalance they insisted on creating. And as they keep pressing forward, they reveal themselves as more than mere aggressors. They become prisoners of their own obsession. Their efforts were never random. They were enacting a pattern designed to test whether they could corrupt something incorruptible. But the test does not bend to their will, it exposes theirs. They are sent again and again to interfere, to distract, to fracture, as though caught in a cycle they neither designed nor comprehend. The more they push, the more the truth of their futility emerges. What they call weakness, patience, quiet strength, refusal to engage on their terms, becomes the mirror that reflects all they tried to conceal. The turning point comes when they refuse to stop, even as every sign tells them they are wrong. Their arrogance binds them more tightly to the outcome they fear. Each additional lie, each deeper intrusion, each desperate maneuver seals what cannot be undone. They mark themselves, not because anyone marks them, but because they reject every opportunity to change. What began as a mission to destroy becomes their own trial. The very path they chose now closes around them, and no escape remains. Not because someone cornered them, but because the truth they ran from was always waiting at the center of their own choices. In the end, they fail not because they lack power, but because they underestimated the quiet force that cannot be touched, only endured. Step beyond the screen. Join and help light the way for others. The havoc they unleash returns to them in ways they cannot contain. Every attempt to darken another's path quietly etches a toll they themselves must pay, and the irony is they sense it even as they act. Those who cloak themselves in false power know, somewhere beneath their bravado, that what they summon does not serve them without demanding something precious in return. When their strikes fail to penetrate, when their incantations collapse mid-air, when the shadows they send scatter before reaching their mark, they imagine they've lost nothing. But that's the deception. The cost is exacted regardless of success, because the very act of reaching into forbidden places stains the hand that reaches. They try to be discreet, hoping no one notices their rituals, their whispered plots, their private attempts to bend the unseen in their favor. But the truth is simpler. Their target cannot be touched. There is a barrier they cannot pierce, an unseen protection that reflects every shard of malice back to its source, sharper, heavier, relentless. And what returns does not come meekly. The forces they hope to command recoil, furious at having been frustrated, and they tear into the summoner with no regard for mercy. The very power they invoked finds them unworthy and turns its appetite upon them, consuming what they once thought untouchable, their mind, their health, the fragile illusions of control they hid behind. The more elaborate their effort, the greater the devastation it brings them. No appeasement can cancel what they set into motion. No whispered plea, no quiet offering, No final gesture can close the doors they pried open. Their own hands open a wound in their lives that no charm can sew shut, and now they live beneath the weight of what they unleashed. In trying to fracture someone beyond their reach, they only fracture themselves. The lesson arrives uninvited. Forces summoned to harm the innocent find no satisfaction until they consume the guilty in full. Their so-called unity only deepens the ruin waiting for them. They mask it as fellowship, as loyalty, as something noble, but the cords binding them are spun from fear, not devotion. The web they cling to for safety is woven from shared complicity, a pact made not to protect each other, but to shield themselves from being exposed alone. If your heart overflows with divine love, now is the moment to let it shine. Click the super thank you button on YouTube and give $50 or more to help carry God's light to others. Your gift will bless not only your life, but countless others. You are part of His sacred plan. Your kindness may be the answer to someone's prayer. Share your blessings and honor His kingdom. May His grace guide you always. Every covert meeting, every joint plan, every moment spent reinforcing each other's malice only tightens the noose they loop around themselves. What they cannot grasp is that harm plotted together is judged together. One voice speaking in darkness implicates them all, because in the eyes of greater laws, silence and agreement weigh the same. That is why collapse finds them collectively. Why their structures weaken all at once. Why they all feel the ground disintegrate beneath them at the same time. It is not coincidence. The chain they thought kept them safe was always a chain dragging them toward the same end. The one who began the assault may have believed they were acting alone, but their hands carried the signatures of them all. What they saw as protection becomes exposure. What they called family becomes the trap that ensures none of them escape. Their alliance was never sacred. It was a shared recklessness dressed up as strength. And the moment they decided to target what they could not destroy, they sealed not just one destiny, but all of theirs together. It is astonishing how convinced they are that silence protects them, as though the absence of witnesses means the absence of record. They believe that hiding their intentions under layers of secrecy erases the evidence entirely. But it never does. What is hidden in one dimension is etched in another, stored beyond the reach of denial. Every muttered plot, every unspoken wish to destroy, every concealed ritual designed to harm does not dissolve in darkness. It is cataloged, piece by piece, in archives that need no human eyes to see. The very energies they summon become their accusers. What they call upon to bend reality to their will does not forget where it came from, nor does it ignore the truth of what it's asked to do. They imagine themselves to be in command of those forces, manipulating them to disrupt destinies and fracture lives. But the reality is the opposite. Those forces only tolerate deceit for so long before turning against the hand that wields them. Once their schemes disintegrate and their ambitions collapse, the same entities they invoke begin to circle them, silent but relentless. They become surrounded not by triumph, but by quiet reckoning, which unfolds whether they see it or not. There are no appeals here, no negotiations, no erasures. The unspoken words, the hidden acts, the offerings made in darkness are not lost. They reverberate through a higher tribunal, demanding balance. Even if no one else knows, even if no light shines on it, the truth remains alive and active, immune to silence. At first, the energies they worked with play along, patient while the rituals are fresh. But as failure blooms, those same forces begin to reveal everything they'd hoped to keep buried. Their betrayals, manipulations, and misdeeds surface without effort, like ink rising to water surface. This is not simply punishment. It is the inevitable reaction to years of tampering with what was never theirs to command. There is nothing left to offer, no gesture left to bargain. The unseen keeps its own records, and now it speaks without restraint. They arrive thinking they are masters of the situation, certain that they hold the advantage, confident in their ability to watch, control, and dismantle what they deem beneath them. What they never anticipate is the moment of awakening, when everything they have built begins to fracture under the weight of a truth they cannot manipulate. That realization doesn't beg for attention. It alters everything silently. It does not seek vengeance. It simply unravels illusions wherever they stand. And suddenly the order shifts. Those who moved freely in shadows find themselves stripped of cover. The instruments they once used to track and intimidate others recoil from them. It is not because of any loud retaliation, but because they encounter a presence that radiates with something they cannot imitate or dilute, a resonance that disarms their rituals, dissolves their masks, and unravels the lies they cling to. There's no need to pursue them, no need to name or unmask them. The presence alone does that work, unspoken and absolute. They feel everything slipping without understanding why. Schemes fail. Confidence drains. Their walls collapse one by one. It is not accident but consequence. Rising into purpose alters the terrain itself. The balance shifts, and every structure built on deceit begins to crack under its own weight. What they call authority falters, not because of a fight, but because what they encounter can't coexist with the darkness they've cultivated. And so, what they once considered prey becomes the mirror of their own undoing. Without striking a single blow, the light they sought to extinguish becomes the revelation of all they tried to hide. They dismiss the idea that anything beyond their reach could hold them accountable. They smirk at the suggestion that unseen laws govern their steps, calling it superstition, calling it fiction. And yet, the very framework they deny is already shifting around them, weaving threads they cannot untangle and enforcing patterns they cannot break. What they call myth reveals itself as design, intricate, ancient, unyielding. It predates every weapon they wield, outlasts every pact they've made, and moves with a precision that no deception can outmaneuver. This balance has nothing to do with vengeance. It does not rush, does not rage. Its only purpose is to restore what they have shattered, to recalibrate what they disturbed. With each move they make against what is true, they trigger currents that deepen their own fall. They mistake silence for absence, thinking that if no hands drag them back immediately, they have slipped past consequence. But this force moves outside the bounds of their ego, patient and deliberate, until suddenly it collapses the illusions in a single, decisive moment. They believe the notion of justice is soft, vague, something they can manipulate or placate. They do not realize they have been walking further into their sentence. With every step, the destruction they now meet is tailored for them alone, precise, inevitable, and exacting. Here, doors seal without warning, allies scatter, influence evaporates quietly. What they feel is not simple misfortune. It is the deliberate correction of the imbalance they insisted on creating. No appeals remain. No excuses carry weight. There is nothing left to bargain with, because the order they mocked does not pause to justify itself. It simply delivers what was always owed. They cross boundaries they do not even perceive, thinking they contend with a single life, when in truth they awaken something vast. The mistake lies in believing they strike against an isolated soul, when what they have provoked stretches far beyond sight. What they aim to damage is not just an individual, but a living embodiment of a legacy that endures through countless trials. It is not alone will they threaten. It is the accumulated strength of everything that came before, carried quietly through generations. They cannot comprehend that the ground they step on was consecrated long before they arrived. There are protections older than their rituals, guardians whose presence they cannot sense, but who are watching all the same. To them, it feels like strategy, just another move in their game. But to the unseen, it is an incursion, a violation, a trespass on hallowed ground. That awakens forces they never imagined they would have to face. The resilience they try to break is not manufactured. It is inherited. It is layered with countless prayers, sacrifices, and covenants they cannot unmake. Each blow they deliver only calls forth more of what sleeps in that lineage. What rises now is not symbolic. It does not ask for forgiveness or restraint. It does not falter. It answers on behalf of all that was defended before, moving through the unseen until every debt is accounted for. They do not fight one person. They challenge an entire line they cannot decipher, guarded by a presence that does not sleep and does not forgive intrusion. The quiet power they thought they could dismantle now reveals itself, older, sharper, and far more dangerous than anything they've summoned. What they unleashed will not rest until everything they built on stolen ground has been dismantled piece by piece. They point and snicker at the quiet around you, convinced it means defeat. They treat your solitude like evidence of failure, reading your silence as weakness. To them, isolation is a sentence handed down in shame, while they revel in their crowded alliances and noisy triumphs. What they fail to see is that the stillness enclosing you is not abandonment, but strategy, a deliberate separation orchestrated to strengthen what they can't touch. You are not discarded. You are preserved. You are not cut off. You are being carved into something they cannot recognize yet. While they fill their days with schemes and whispers, nothing they launch seems to pierce. They mistake your stillness for stagnation, but it is the sound of something vast and powerful taking shape beyond their comprehension. Layers of insight, resilience, and clarity welded into your being in secret. They cannot imagine that absence itself is the forge that prepares you. That invisibility is where your authority is refined. They assume being unseen means being irrelevant, but what emerges from that hidden place carries a force they cannot counterfeit. That season of quiet molds you into something they no longer know how to confront. You return not as they left you, but transformed, carrying a depth they cannot mimic. Meanwhile, while they believe they encircle you in darkness and confusion, they fail to notice the trap tightening around them instead. The very energy they release now coils back with precision, turning their stage into a cage. The silence they mock becomes the very thing that shields you and exposes them. The one they thought broken now stands in a power that doesn't even need to speak to shatter their illusions. That quiet was never defeat, it was design. They stand behind the walls of their agreements, certain that those pacts will hold forever. They rely on whispered promises made in secret rooms, convinced those arrangements make them immune. They call on hidden allies and ancient oaths, leaning on them as if they are permanent. What they never expect is that such agreements expire. Every shadow deal is bound to conditions they can no longer fulfill. At first, those arrangements appear to shield them, granting influence, authority, and false peace. But nothing built in the dark stays stable. The moment they fail to meet the unspoken terms, the facade begins to fracture. That shield they trusted was only ever conditional, and now it splits open. They try to repair it, scrambling to sacrifice more, to beg, to bargain, to summon, but it's too late. What is tearing now is not just a bond between them and what they serve, but between them and the law of balance itself. They were given time to change course, time to stop before it was irreversible, but they squandered every chance. They overreached, abusing what little grace remained, and now the very cover they depended on evaporates. The cost hovering over them was never arbitrary. It has been accruing since the first violation. Every layer of protection was just a delay, never a pardon. And now, what they clung to as sanctuary becomes the stage of their exposure. Those hidden contracts collapse. The alliances dissolve. The darkness that once shielded them now casts light on every secret they thought buried. There's no more hiding, no more rewriting, no more pretending the reckoning isn't here. Every promise they trusted is gone. Every favor has expired. What remains is nothing but the weight of their own choices, reflected back without mercy. They cannot stand the way you simply exist, unshaken and unmasked, as though their distortions slide off you before they even land. They are not just trying to damage you. They are trying to deform what you reflect, to cloud the image you hold up to them of what they've denied in themselves. They do not react because of arrogance or noise on your part. They react because something in you strips away their illusions. You carry the unbearable evidence that there is another way to live, a quiet defiance they cannot replicate, a kind of purity that unsettles every facade they wear. Every time you remain steady, it disrupts their narrative. You become a kind of mirror, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that exposes every hidden fracture. Your calm reveals their turmoil. Your steadiness reveals their frantic need to control. Your grace reveals their bitterness. They invest so much in twisting your light into something ugly, telling lies about your nature, projecting shame and suspicion, yet none of it seems to work, and that failure leaves them with only themselves, staring into the truth they've been running from all along. What unsettles them most is not punishment but clarity, a clarity they cannot escape as long as you remain visible. They keep trying to push that mirror away, but it does not shatter. They keep trying to disguise themselves, but your very presence undoes their efforts. Now the conflict turns inward. What haunts them is not what you've done, but what your presence stirs awake in the quiet places they've buried. Guilt begins to speak. Fear begins to echo. The reflection refuses to dim. You were never their enemy, only the reminder they've refused to face. But reminders do not wait forever. Eventually, the silence gives way, and what they thought they could hide is all they can hear. They never imagined you would withstand what they sent. Everything they threw at you was meant to crush you so completely that nothing recognizable could remain. They built every obstacle to ensure you could not rise again. And yet you did. Not only did you endure, but you emerged with scars that speak louder than their entire arsenal of lies. And that survival becomes something they cannot contain, because it signals more than your own victory. It signals that their entire system has failed.